Hey guys, thanks for joining me this week on For All Things Lexington. It's the only show dedicated to Lexington, South Carolina. Here, you'll hear me talk to people, groups, bands, and organizations about where to go, what to do, and who's who in and all around our beautiful Lake Murray. I'm your host, Angela Barrett, and this is For All Things Lexington. Hey guys, I've got with me today Bristow Marchant. Did I say that right?
Bristow.
I had it written down completely wrong. And he is, I guess, the writer, the host of the podcast, The Wrong Walk Home, which is the story of the lynching of Willie Lee Park that took place here in Lexington, South Carolina.
That's right.
Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
So I know we're going to talk about the podcast and this story, which is, I listened to the podcast and I just couldn't believe all of the things that happened to this one individual. But I want to know first about this Best Beard Award.
Oh, the best beard. So that was all. We had an intern in the office, Holly Pogue from USC, who on her last day was going around giving out awards to everybody, just on one of our Post-it notes, just posting up.
Yeah, I was going to say it was a Nancy award because
and I was awarded the Best Beard Award.
I gotcha. Well, there were a couple of other awards that you did that were not on Post-it notes.
Yeah.
Let's see. You got, I was trying to find where I wrote those down. One just recently.
Yes, just a couple of weeks ago now, from when we're talking, the South Carolina Press Association has their annual awards banquet where they give out best journalist and all that, and the category I won in was actually for faith reporting this year, which isn't strictly like my beat. I cover Lexington County generally, but last year Mount Horeb out here and a couple other Methodist churches had kind of broken away from the United Methodist Church, and I ended up writing several stories about that whole process and how that was kind of finalized last year.
Right.
And yeah, so that ended up, there was a series of articles, and that ended up winning the award for faith reporting in South Carolina.
And prior to that, because I can't find it in my notes, a couple of years back, there was a different one from the Press Association that you wore.
Oh, which one was this? I'm thinking, most recently, coming out of 2020, I won the best obituary original story. It's sad. Yeah, like if you write, and I thankfully the family, it was an elderly couple, who had passed away. Both of them contracted COVID and died sadly, and the family was very open in talking about them and celebrating their life and everything. We had a very detailed write up on that, so that was a good story too, especially at such a difficult time.
Yeah, and you've gotten several others, I know, because obituary was not the one I read. So there have been several, again, real awards, not on sticky notes, and for that, congratulations. But so let's talk about the story of Willie Lee Park. And Ben, I want you to tell me, I know you can't go through the whole thing, but just give me the crux of the story. And then what I want to talk about is how this came to you, and what your 8-year interest in this story, what made it be not an infatuation, but something that you were very emphatic about getting out.
All right, so just to set the stage for the story itself, it's in 1890 here in Lexington. Willie Lee Park was a young black man. I think he was 16 or 17 when this happened. And he ends up being accused of assaulting a young white woman. He goes to trial down here at the Lexington County Courthouse, not the one that's there now, but the original one. He was held in the jail, which is on the site of what's now the old courthouse here on Main Street. He was convicted at trial and sentenced to be hanged. His attorney, he had like a court-appointed attorney, just a local attorney who ended up representing him, puts together this big appeal to the governor to try and get him off. He had several witnesses saying he was at church that night when all this allegedly went on. And when it looks like he might get a reprieve, he might get a retrial, something like that, an armed mob breaks into the county jail down here and kills him. And the man who was accused of leading the lynch mob ends up going on trial within the same year. This all happened in 1890. He goes on trial here in Lexington within the same year and is pretty quickly acquitted of any involvement, even though he had told several people he was involved in the lynch mob. The sheriff who was in the jail when they broke in specifically said he recognized his voice. But yeah, he ends up getting acquitted. And all this was put together by Michael Burgess, who's a history teacher at River Bluff High School. He did a ton of research, pulled together all these like primary sources, like newspaper accounts and legal documents from 1890, all in response to just a student's question. They were talking about lynching in history class, and he just asked, were there any lynchings in Lexington? And he went and he researched that, and he found all this material. This was a story that was like very heavily covered in the press at the time, so there's a ton of newspaper clippings about the case and every twist and turn.
And there were a lot.
And there were a lot. And I was thinking as I was writing the story about this, this reads like a true crime podcast. So I pitched that idea at the state. McClatchy, which is the company that owns the state, has an audio department that can put together, productions like this. And, we got some good equipment. We recorded some on-site interviews, and we spent a long time working on this and putting it together. And now it's out on all the podcast platforms. There's a page at thestate.com/Leapart where all the recordings live. And the news value of all this, it's a news story because as part of Michael's research and everything, they're trying to put together some kind of appeal to get Willie Leapart's rape conviction overturned, where it seemed like things were heading 130 years ago, and actually, get some justice for this young man. And the hangup they've encountered is what they've been told is in order to apply for a pardon from the Pardon, Probation, and Parole Board, you have to have, legal standing to ask for a pardon on behalf of someone who's already deceased. And that has to be somebody with some kind of family connection to the individual. Willie Leapart's family, we know he had like brothers who were living in Lexington at the time. They all kind of moved on after all this happened. And
because his brother at one point was in jail.
His brother, they arrested him and his brother. Edward was the brother's name, I think. And they were in jail together. Edward ends up getting released right before Willie goes on trial. And I think Michael has done research with like a genealogist. They've tried to track down some like distant Leapart relatives. And they've always just run into a roadblock, or the case comes up cold. So he was still looking to try and find somebody who has a family connection back to Willie Leapart, who could go to the Triple P board and actually ask to get this pardon of their deceased relative. So that's an ongoing effort. We're trying to find somebody who would be able to do that.
Right. And the thing that I think that caught my attention the most was the victim of the rape was in her description of the actor was her detail in which she was able to describe this guy, and they called him, now we know is Willie, within, hours, I guess.
Right. So she was attacked in a home. She was in this home. Allegedly, this man came through the window and attacked her, and then ran off. And after a crowd had kind of gathered at the home after all this happened, she was presented with Willie Leapart. Somebody pulls Willie Leapart out of wherever they found Willie and brought him to her. And she said, "Yeah, that's the guy." And I think we have her her legal statement that she gave to the police, whatever, in the story and also in the podcast. And she says, "And they tell me his name is Willie Leapart," but this is not someone she apparently had any connection to before any of this happened.
Because according to witnesses, he really was walking home from church.
Yeah.
Which is what I guess the name came, the wrong walk home.
Yeah. I mean, they were at the church, several people place him at the church, and there's famously this 20-minute gap where the main witness, the person who was there with Willie, he leaves the church, he walks down the street home, he comes back there's 20 minutes where Willie is unaccounted for, and the contention is, the home was a fine antebellum home here on Main Street. That's at least a 30-minute walk from New Bethel Church. Michael and I both walked that route, through town, and it's it's an uphill climb, and it would be difficult to get all the way across town, commit the crime, and get all the way back to the church within the time frame
right.
had to commit it.
But at some point, she sort of recants a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so a part of the appeal is they were able to get the letters that she had written to her brother and her mother, where she kind of hems and haws about whether she really does think it was Willie who did it, or even if anything occurred at all, really. So that all that was a part of the appeal, which I know Michael is still looking for. We have press accounts of all this, so reporters at the time, apparently saw these documents, but we haven't been able to find any of this in the state archives, the trial transcripts in the basement of the courthouse are, it was 130 years ago, so maybe it's not that strange, but they're not there anymore. So a lot of the fine details of this, 130 years later, it's difficult to recreate.
Right. So tell me, how did this strike your attention? How did you hear about the story and go from there?
Well, Michael, I don't remember the specifics. I know I was probably talking to Michael about it. But he had done all the research. He put all this together. Willie had his story kind of laid out. And he'd done some presentations on this just to talk about the case. I think he mentions this on the podcast. He actually went to the State House, gave a talk to the House Democratic Caucus, trying to drum up some interest in the case. And as a part of this campaign he's been on, we did a story in the state. This would have been, I think, December of 2021. So it was a while ago. And God bless him, he's still working to try and find somebody. But we spent probably about a year just recording and scripting everything out for a 6-episode podcast. So hopefully this does something to kind of shake some of those cobwebs loose.
So yeah, that was my next question. So now, the agenda, the reason, other than it is a really good story and very fascinating, what is the hopes of the gain from that?
Well, hopefully, and I think Michael, said this very explicitly on the podcast, he needs somebody. He needs to find this person. If Willie's name is ever going to be cleared, they need a person, a living Leapart descendant in some form or fashion who can trace back to Willie Leapart, who has that legal standing to ask for the pardon. Otherwise, they're just, that's like a roadblock they have not been able to get past in looking for justice. So if somebody out there hears my podcast or hears this, and that it just strikes some kind of chord, they heard this from their grandparent or whatever, that this happened in their family way back when, they just need somebody who can show that connection to get over that final hurdle.
I was going to say, I assume that y'all talked with JR over at the Lexington.
Oh, JR's involved. We've talked to a few folks. I know he's talked to a lot of folks about this, and he's gotten on the phone with people who he thinks might be, Leapart relatives, and they'll just hang up on him because they have no idea what he's talking about. They don't know the story, and this strange man is just calling them up and trying to tell them about a lynching, and they're
right.
Wow, we don't want anything to do with this.
And I guess the other fascinating part was, and I actually had to back it up and listen again, was what actually happened they went into the jail.
Going into the jail.
That's pretty ballsy.
When the first, there's another lengthy statement from the sheriff that's read on the podcast.
Right.
He was in the jail. The sheriff and several deputies had kind of stationed themselves inside the jail. They literally locked themselves in the jail and handed out the key, had the key delivered to the solicitor's office, so they would be secure in the jail, because they knew that this could or would happen. So the sheriff and his family are inside the jail one night when this mob breaks through the door, gets the key from him, goes down the hallway, and there's a scuffle. Willie tries to fight back when they try to take him out of the cell, and they ended up just firing volley after volley into the cell and killing him. And there's another description in there from the coroner shows up afterward, and he's just in this horrible state after they shot him multiple times. Yeah, it was a very quite interesting story. Yeah.
So now, this was not your first podcast, though, was it?
This is the first podcast I've done.
You've done. Okay. I couldn't remember if I had done up homework to say that was true or not. So
I remember Clutches put out some other podcasts.
Yes.
But this is the first one I've worked on to this extent of actually doing all the research and the interviews and the writing. I've got a doc on my computer that's the entire podcast scripted out with all the audio insets, and it goes for 70 something pages. That's what I'm reading from when you can hear me talking.
Right.
On podcast.
But a lot, right?
It's a lot.
It's right.
I think the podcast in total it's over 3 hours long. So
yeah. So do you have a new story that maybe you're working on now? There's something like this. I don't mean.
Has anyone
we're writing for the page.
I'm busy every day. I'm interested in all things Lexington County, but along those lines, at this point, with this story in particular, I think we're just waiting for that break. That would be the next big thing. People have told me they like my voice on podcast, yeah. So I've been encouraged to do that.
Radio. Yeah. So now let's talk about, you write, not exclusively, but a lot about Lexington and surrounding area. Now, has that always been your place at the state newspaper?
I've done a few different things at the state. The last few years I've been covering Lexington County. I previously covered Bristow County Council and the State House. And I've really, I've covered stuff all over on different levels. So I have kind of a broad remit, and even in, my current role covering Lexington, that basically covers everything. So
begin all your following here in Lexington right now, and the traffic.
Without you said that, but I mean that's when we think of, I've had conversations with my editor about like the Lexington beat kind of overall, and it is kind of, this is a community that's in a very big shift from like small town rural area into a lot of like suburban sprawl and new developments, especially around the lake and everything that comes with that, including traffic. And I think that's kind of how we conceive of covering Lexington is, what is this community in transition? What is it going to look like, in 10 years? And it's, a lot of that, it shows itself in different forms. It's, there's new businesses coming in. There's people coming in from all over who are moving to be by the lake. But all that has its own problems that come with it. So I think that just looking at Lexington overall, that's right. It's a lot of stuff that intersects with why is traffic so bad.
Yeah, right. It's the number one topic around here.
Yeah.
How do you, do you go like the council? How do you get your leads for some of these stories, like to be,
Either I watch, at this point, post COVID, and I usually just watch like the live stream, a lot of the county council meetings. I do a lot of school board coverage and education.
Sure.
So like those are all online. You can watch them live on like YouTube. So that's usually an easier option than going to a lot of meetings in person. But I do try and follow like local government sort of things pretty closely. I get the agendas every week for all these meetings, and that can like turn up some good leads. But also just like trying to be aware of what's happening in the community and people's concerns, and as events unfold and things come up, just trying to stay on top of things.
Now, do you live in Lexington?
Well, actually, I do. I live in Columbia, so I'm on the other side of the river here. I live on the other side of Columbia, near where Dreer High School is.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I read an article of yours. So tell me more about this cornbread cowboy.
Oh yeah, this was probably the other big thing I wrote. The cornbread cowboy, for anyone who doesn't know, is a bit of an online celebrity. He's on TikTok and Instagram. You'll see him. Sometimes you can recognize him because he is local, so he'll be around like the Columbia, Lexington area at different things. But he always has, his bit is like he'll have on the shades, and he has kind of like a retro aesthetic in how he dresses, and he'll have some kind of caption on it that makes him sound like this kind of country cowboy kind of character in whatever he's doing. And I was familiar with his work because I'd seen him on Instagram, and I know a lot of people who like and follow a lot of his stuff. And then we found him because he's local, and we were able to do a little write-up on him. Barry Lee is his real name. He actually he has a small speaking role in the podcast. He's reading one of the historical documents.
Gotcha.
Because he in real life he does have like a distinctive Southern kind of accent. But he's an interesting character, and I know people that story's been very well read, and now people will like share their cornbread cowboy sightings around town when he shows up and stuff.
That's funny. It was interesting. Absolutely. So you went to College of Charleston, right?
That's right.
And so fill me in just kind of give me a timeline of how we got here.
Well, like I said, I am originally from Columbia.
Right.
I grew up here. I went to AC Flora. I ended up down in Charleston, College of Charleston. I am a history major, poli-sci minor. And after I graduated there, I've worked at a few different newspapers since then, all of them in South Carolina. I started at the Clinton Chronicle, which is a weekly in Clinton, South Carolina. Probably best known because that's where Presbyterian College is. I covered PC sports for a while there. So I've done a few
Blue Hose, right?
Yeah, Blue Hose. They have if you go to their football stadium, they have a statue of like a Mel Gibson Braveheart kind of guy standing out in front of it. That's what the Blue Hose are. They're like, Scottish rowers with like the blue paint on them. That's where Blue Hose comes from.
Yeah. It's not a hose, it's blue.
People get very confused by the name whenever PC shows up. But I covered them for a bit. I was at the Sumter Item here on the other side of Columbia for a while. And then before I was at the State, I was at the Rock Hill Herald by Charlotte, which is another McClatchy paper. And then I kind of shifted over to my role here.
So do you miss the paper not being in print?
I do. That's
I think you're not the only one.
It's sad. I mean, I grew up reading the paper. I grew up reading the State. My house took the State. That was kind of my window to the world. Growing up, my first introduction to journalism, and in the modern world, it's just not like cost effective,
right?
To print 7 days a week, and also like the entire industry has really shifted to, I'm sure this is before my time, obviously, but I'm sure when thestate.com got set up, people were thinking we are a newspaper and this is our little side thing that promotes the newspaper. And today the focus really is like online. You want to get a story, if there's breaking news, you're writing a story, you want to get it up on the website, and then we'll think about the paper later. It's really shifted to becoming an online business that also has this print component.
Right.
And who knows how much longer that'll last. We're going down to 3 days a week. As of next month, it'll be a Wednesday, Friday, Sunday paper. They still have like an e-edition. Like there's a replica of the paper that goes online every day, and that'll continue. That has all the stories and all the news in there. But the physical product, like when I started, we were still down on Shop Road in that big old building that had a very large printing press in the back of it, and the trucks would come in and out of there every evening. And that was when we already talked about the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, all that kind of got shut down. And then they just sold off the building. The paper's printed in Charlotte now, so it's printed better than it used to be, and now it's just shipped down. So that whole thing is just in transition.
And so it only comes out, the physical paper.
Yeah. Right now it's 6 days a week except for Saturday.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's April 22nd. It shifts to the 3 day a week schedule.
Okay. Yeah, I knew it was getting less and less, and will probably be gone at some point in time, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think those three will last, but
right. Yeah. And I'm still, obviously a paper person. I still like to see it. I can read it, but I'm like, I can't dog ear that. Or
when you see like your story in print, like in the boxes around town, that has a good feel.
Right. Nice. And so anyway, you got to the State paper, and that was what year?
I've been here since 2016.
2016. And you had said that you were in different positions. So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
That's difficult to say. I hope I'll still be in newspapers. I hope I'll still be in Columbia covering everything that's going on around here. Like I said, I'm from Columbia. I like it here. I like being able to serve the community that I grew up in and am familiar with. So hopefully that will continue in whatever form the news business moves into next.
And so I asked this a minute ago, but I don't think we really got. I probably didn't let you finish your answer or something. But I know you wrote that big, and it took, 8 years really to get all of that together? Was that for Will?
Like I said, the first story ran in 2021.
Okay.
It probably took, I know, I pitched the idea for a podcast, and, then it took a minute for that to actually get, like, the green light for us to do everything. So I probably spent about a year in total from probably when I, like, sat down and did the first interviews with Michael up until publication.
Right. So have you got another story that could maybe turn into another whole podcast yet, or you're still waiting on maybe something like that to come along?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I'm sure there are definitely stories out there. I haven't thought about what the next project is going to be. Oh yeah, I'm not thinking about I know that'll definitely be. I hope there are opportunities to do that, and I'm sure there will be.
Yeah, that was really good. Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm not looking to take on, like, quite that large a project again, but I feel there will be other opportunities to do stuff like this, because I did enjoy making it, and it seems like folks have enjoyed listening to it. So.
Yeah, and hopefully, if you guys have not had a chance to see it again, you can find it on YouTube or any of the podcast channels, the same as that you find me on. And well, thank you so much for being here. This was great.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed it.
And if somebody has a story they think you need to hear, or have questions about this, how do they get in touch with you?
Please email bmarchant@thestate.com. It's at the end of every podcast episode. If you know any more about Willie Lee Park or anything else that's going on in Lexington, please do reach out there and let me know.
Yep. And if you know someone, or you yourself would like to be a guest, you can reach me at 4, that's the number 4, allthings.com. Thanks. Hey guys, thanks for hanging out with me today, and I hope you enjoyed the show. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or know someone you'd like to see on the show, contact me at forallthingslexington.com. That's the number 4, allthingslexington.com.
For All Things Lexington has been brought to you in part by Bristow Marchant, journalist with the State Paper and author of The Wrong Walk Home. And by Angela Barrett at HomeMattersSC.com, building on what matters to you.
William Faulkner said that in the South, the past is never dead. It isn't even past. In the small town of Lexington, South Carolina, that past includes one part of a particularly dark chapter in American history. Locals know this story about a young man who took a wrong turn on the way home from church late one night and became the victim of a racially charged accusation that would tear this South Carolina town apart.
We tried to be upfront that racial violence occurred in Lexington County. It's not something that we try to hide.
My name is Bristow Marchant, and I'm a reporter for the state newspaper. And for almost 3 years, I've been investigating the life and death of a man named Willie Leapart, a black teenager from Lexington, South Carolina, who died a horrific death that characterized a particular point in history, leaving behind an unlikely story. And while his case may have occurred over a century ago, many questions remain about the nature of his murder today. It's a dramatic story about a dark period in American history, the unsteady transition from slavery to a new kind of multiracial society that resonates with news headlines today.
It is not at all like any other lynching that I am familiar with, at least in my 52 years in being a historian in the South.
And whether or not a 19th century injustice can still be corrected.
If you understand the Jim Crow South, that is not surprising.
Listen to The Wrong Walk Home, The Lynching of Willie Leapart, coming February 28th on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube Music, or wherever you get your favorite shows.